But basically, actually, well, they're both fresh. But I'll start with Seinfeld. I'm a huge Seinfeld fan. Easily one of the best shows. Not the Bubble Boy. Sorry, everyone. One of my favorite shows, if not my favorite show of all time. Definitely up there in the top creme de la creme of sitcoms amongst across that will forever span generations of people to be entertained by this show. The comedic genius of Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld cannot be repeated whatsoever. I think their chemistry was great. That being said, it is a sitcom. There was a part, I don't remember exactly what season it was. I think it was season 7 or 8. It was when it was when George Costanza. George Costanza. I love him to death. George is getting married. So he is, there's 2 parts to this. There's the beginning of it and the ending of it. It's the season 6 opens up. I think it's season 6 or 7. Opens up with George being George is upset. He's very depressed. He's lonely. He's seeing all these couples, and finally he sees an episode. The start of the episode is he goes up to Susan, who worked with him at NBC. They broke up after a little while. They had a good thing going. Blah blah blah. What happens was George decides to say, "Hey, Susan, it's George. It's me. It's George." And she's like, "Yeah, George." And he's like, "Will you marry me?" And just like that. It was like the show that season ran its course. But that was the beginning. I bring that up now because the beginning of it, that was the beginning of their marriage, their engagement, if you will. The ending of season 7, 8, I'm not sure which season it is off the top of my head, but the ending of one of the seasons of Seinfeld, I think it's season 7, where Susan is getting ready to Susan is getting ready to send out the invitations for the wedding, where she's licking everyone shut, and the invitations have toxic, like, for those of you who know what an envelope and a letter is, good for you, and don't just use email. It's basically when she was licking the envelopes sealed, but every time she licked it, she would get a little bit of the residue of the invitations in her mouth. And why am I bringing that up? Because she got poisoned and then she died. The character of Susan died at the end of that season. They killed her off. So she died, and George, they took her to the hospital, and then the doctor's like, are you the fiance? She's like, yeah. And he's like, your fiance is dead. Susan is dead. And he's like, what? And they handled that so well it's in a show about nothing. That episode had a lot of heart to it. It had a lot of it had some stuff to it that I thought was actually really interesting. It showed how really you can get true what's the word? You can get true what do you call it? You can get true emotion out of any sitcom, and it's not just like for a matter of like it's not just all about the laughs. It's not just all about the laughs or the giggles or like haha that's funny. But there at the bottom of it, it has heart, and that episode had a lot of heart to it. It was very emotional too for the time being, and it got very serious, which is part of our tonight's topic when sitcoms got serious. But I will say this was a big episode for them when they killed off Susan, because it's like, oh, not many sitcoms do that to begin with. Like they handle death comedically, but this one handled death very moderately, and if not very emotionally at the same time. Have you guys seen this episode of it?
Yes, I've seen it.
I don't remember, but I gotta see it.
Okay, so basically it's a little bit into the show. It's like in the 6th or 7th season, Allie, but it's when once you get into it and you actually see like how they handled the death of spoilers, how they handled the death of Susan. It's very interesting stuff. Truthfully, it's very interesting. But that is one of my first picks is Seinfeld. Seinfeld is one of my favorite shows of all time. The be all end all of sitcoms, starts and ends here. I've seen it pretty much every episode, probably twice, 3 times over each, give or take 1 or 2 episodes here or there. But I love this show. It's hysterical. Jerry Seinfeld. I'm actually seeing him this Saturday night in New York City, the Beacon Theater. Shout out to you, Mr. Jerry Seinfeld. You are truly a comedic genius and forever will be. But yeah, that is my first pick with Seinfeld.